Nascosta rosa, io sento il tuo profumo divino.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and the grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. We spoke in the last meditation about the life of faith, with the starting point based on how God sees us, how He looks at us, and above all, how He loves us. He loves us. This is something we vaguely know, but that we have to always re-emphasize all the time, because it is one of those fundamental truths. And even as we come here to pray today, there is one solid principle that must guide everything we do, even though it may indeed stay kind of vague to us. But there is always a solid principle, no matter where you are in your life, that must always be there. And that is that we have to be guided by the truth. In whatever I do, I must be guided by the truth. If you're here today, it's because you want to be guided by the truth, or at least based on the truth. And not only that, but what you hear today is based on the truth, is the truth. It may be said in a more or less decent way, maybe it's not even said in a very good way, maybe even in a rather inadequate way. But that is secondary. The way and the way of speaking, all that is kind of secondary to the fact that what you believe is not simply an opinion among others, but what you believe, what you hold in your life is true. And in the same way, no matter how eloquent a man may be when he speaks, you know, how many great images or arguments he may use, how logical, how dramatic a flair he has, if in the end what he says is not true, well, then we can't really listen to him, even though he speaks very eloquently. And why is this? Well, this is because we are made in the image and likeness of God. This is what Pope John Paul II said at the very beginning of his famous encyclical that was published when I was in Rome, called Veritatis Splendor, on the splendor of truth, of the moral teaching of the Church. He said, this is how he begins this beautiful encyclical. I believe it was published in, as I recall, 1993 or so. He said, the splendor of truth shines forth in all the works of the Creator, and in a special way in man, created in the image and likeness of God. Truth enlightens man's intellect, or intelligence rather, and shapes his freedom, leading him to know and to love the Lord. Hence the psalmist says, let the light of your face shine on us, O Lord. The light of your face shine on us. That's what Pope John Paul II said in the opening words of Veritatis Splendor. Just like our Lord said, you are the light of the world. He was the light of the world, but he was saying to his apostles and his disciples and to all of us, you are the light of the world insofar as you reflect him. I mean, that's quite a statement. Say, you are the light of the world. What a statement. It is associated with the vocation of the people of Israel in the Old Testament, who had this dream to make, you could say, the truth and the justice of God shine out to all the nations. All the other nations kept, you could say, kept their gods, had their own divinities, but in the end, Israel wanted their God, though God had revealed himself to them, that their God would eventually be, you could say, spread to all the nations. It would be like light to all the nations. And that is the light of truth. I know somebody who did a long-ranging study on the first appearance of streetlights in the 19th century in England. The gaslight industry. And the book was titled Progressive Enlightenment, The Origins of the Gaslight Industry, 1780 to 1820. So it's really late 18th and early 19th century England. And it's about the history of technology, how gaslights started to be used, and basically how the appearance of streetlights in London radically transformed the society of the time. Imagine if, well, as soon as the sun went down, it was complete black, dark. You could never go out because it was so dark, you couldn't find your way around. So people would stay in their homes. They just stayed there. Well, of course, they had their candles, but getting around was particularly difficult in those days. But streetlights helped people to see clearly the hazardous areas that they were kind of wandering about. We take streetlights for granted. These lamps outside, we go about 4:1, those streetlights that we can see quite clearly. So we can go out, we can go into the dangers, we can go out into the dark. It's not a big deal for us. Because those lights help situate us. But if our surrounding is always dark, probably we only have a vague little torch or a candle or something to guide us, and we would be very vulnerable. We would just kind of go out, and probably we would stay inside, and we would not go out very far into the real world. It would be too scary, perhaps too intimidating. And indeed, I remember going along Highway 20 just outside Montreal, and indeed many of the lights there, for some reason, were not maintained, and they went out, and you'd go there, drive during the rain, and it would be slippery, and you just rely on your own headlights and the headlights of the other cars, and you're kind of like taking your life in your hands, but then suddenly the headlight or the street lights on the highway came back and they were installed properly, and you suddenly felt secure again, right? And we have to feel secure with the light of truth, that our life is guided like that by the light of truth, not just by our own intellect, our own capacities. And indeed, Pope Benedict, you could say, in his own pastoral ministry, he insisted a lot on the importance of falling in love with the light of truth. Falling in love with truth. Or you could say, perhaps, letting our lives be guided by the truth. Being passionate about the truth. Because if we are passionate about the truth, and we don't think or don't accept this idea that everything is relative, and that what you think is good, what I think is good, it doesn't really matter. If we overcome that and believe that we can indeed, you could say, embrace the vocation to the truth, to be guided by the truth, this will make us feel a lot more secure, more stable, and it will instill a lot of courage in us. Not pride, but courage. And we would readily see the dangers around us, the threats around us, but we would readily also see all the beauties of God's creation. The beauties of wildlife and trees and so forth. I mean, imagine, obviously, a city that is well lit, that has street lamps everywhere, where one can see there's no dark alleys, etc. Well, people would be able to explore it and see it around. It would be lovely to go around that city. And it would extend us to the whole range of possibilities of that city. We would not be stuck in our own home. But today, many people, you could say, go shopping in large commercial malls downtown, and there they see a whole panoply of choices. And when you enter a mall, there's usually a big map, and it says, you are here. You are here. And then you can see, well, sports section here, clothing section here, whatever. And we're kind of just invited to choose from a cacophony of possibilities that are obviously very numerous and screaming at us to choose. Instead of truly living in the kingdom of Christ, you could say, when Christ is seated at the throne, and we adore him, we love him. We're just invited just to go anywhere. We choose anything we want. And some late 19th century philosophers, well, they said, well, we have to invent our own ideals. They were very suspicious of the past, of the traditions of the past, or even of the traditional ideals of the Western world that spawned Christianity and its values and its moral compass. But though they may have invented some ideas, at least they had some ideals. Now, in what we call the postmodern times, well, very often we hear people even working against the very notion of having ideals. We are at a time, to say, that is very cynical. It's bathed in cynicism about the truth, about the very possibility not only of having ideals, but certainly about having the truth. And it's all about unmasking. You hear about people just, we have to unmask, right? And we're kind of stuck, we're told that we're stuck in laws that control us, economic laws, structures. The best we can do is unmask them, and this reflects a deep nihilism. That is, that there is no real deep truth to the structure of reality, and to our world, to our life. And we see this, of course, in many trends in social media. Obviously, there are many good things there, but very dark trends too. And we're tried, you could say, it's as though we're told that the culture is controlling us, and we simply have to unmask it. But we're never told what to replace these things with. They just unmask. They don't unmask in order to arrive at the truth, but simply to do so in complete defense of freedom, but not a freedom that is truly connected with truth. Cardinal Ratzinger, before he was Pope, said that in the mind of contemporary man, freedom appears to a large extent as the absolutely highest good. Freedom as the absolutely highest good, to which all other goods are subordinate. He says, court decisions accord artistic freedom and freedom of opinion primacy over every moral value. Values which compete with freedom or which might necessitate its restriction seem to be fetters, or, he says, taboos, that is, relics of archaic prohibitions and fears. Political policy must show that it contributes to the advancement of freedom in order to be accepted. And of course, freedom is a good thing. But for it to have value, it must be in some way connected to the truth. And that's why he goes on to explain how, many people just react with great suspicion to the concept of truth. Like the famous moment in which our Lord is about to be sent off in the Passion, and he says that he is the truth. He speaks the truth. He is the truth. And Pilate, in a very cynical way, said, what is the truth? What is the truth? Of course, he doesn't let him answer what is the truth. And because it's as though anybody who maintains that the fact that there is a truth must be ready to be classified as a dreamer or maybe as a fanatic. This is the phase we're in our society today, the kind of phase of nihilism, cynicism, a cynicism that we hear in the voice of Pontius Pilate. What is truth? What is truth? And it often happens, I don't know if it's happened to you, but just authentic discussions, or you could call them an argument. I say this, and then somebody else comes back with that, another, with authorities. And they're no longer, as soon as you say something, if you make a statement, your abuse is hurled at you for being racist because you have a different opinion. It's anarchy. Of course, we know that Pontius Pilate asked that question. He didn't give Jesus the opportunity to respond. He wasn't ready for an argument. He just made a statement and then had Jesus flogged. And Barabbas, a thief, a murderer, he had him released. And then full violence began. Because Barabbas was a murderer, he was a thief. And Jesus stood there as a full testimony to the truth. I read an article recently about an Italian actor whose name is Pietro Sarrubi. And interesting because he played the role of Barabbas in the movie The Passion of the Christ. I'm sure you've seen the movie The Passion of the Christ. And in that scene where Jim Caviezel, who plays Christ, is standing in front of Pilate, this is that moment in which Pilate has just said, what is the truth? What is it then? Jim Caviezel, who's completely covered in makeup, of course, he's got a black eye and standing there so serene, so peaceful, you could say. And it's that moment in which the actor who plays Pilate, I don't remember his name now, but he says, okay, there's a vision to release one of your prisoners. And he says, bring here Barabbas, bring him right now. And sure enough, they have Barabbas brought in, and he's chained up. He's got a chain on his neck, and he's completely, you could say, almost rabid, and also again covered in makeup and looking quite bedraggled. And the crowd says, "Release Barabbas! Release Barabbas!" And the actor, Pietro Sarrubi, who was not a practicing Catholic at the time, he was a little bit, but not really. It wasn't very important for him. But he was just playing a role of a kind of rabid Barabbas, and kind of also a bit cynical. And then when he sees that he's going to get free, he lets the soldier take his bonds so that he could be released and remove the chains. And he's happy he's going to get released, but he's kind of sort of ferocious. And as he's now unchained, they remove it from his neck. He steps down the staircase and he turns to Jim Caviezel. He's told by Mel Gibson, turn to Jim Caviezel and look. And he turns and he sees this serene face of Jim Caviezel. And the actor said, at that moment, I was so struck by his serene and calm face. And he said, it struck me like a thunderbolt. It struck me like a thunderbolt. I really saw in Jim Caviezel, who was a confrere with me, another actor, I really saw Christ. And he almost like, how would I say, he was very profoundly moved by that gaze. But then he had to keep going down. That was his role. That was his task as an actor. But he said he never forgot that gaze. It so deeply affected him that he went back to Mass, he went back to confession, and so forth. And not only that, but he decided to leave the profession of acting because he felt it was You could say it was too cynical, he didn't like the atmosphere, but eventually he went back to acting, and he was in the theaters, I understand, and he went back. But a very good, he'd been really converted by the gaze, he said, of truth. Of course, truth represented, in this case, by the actor, Jim Caviezel. So you and I, too, we must really let truth guide our life. That's why I once said, I'm the truth, the way, and the life. But that means it has to be lived in all its integrity, in all its fullness, you could say. And we must never fear truth. Never fear letting ourselves be known as what we really are. It's true that on some occasions, living the truth and saying the truth can bring us some trouble that we could avoid by just saying a lie. But we have to think, only good can come from the truth. In other words, lying, not saying the truth, lying is never truly worthwhile. It may protect us to a certain degree to lie, in a certain way, yes, momentarily. But lying is really never worthwhile, not even economic gain at the expense of some sacrifice of the truth. Or even for freeing for us from some kind of punishment, or just even for having to undergo it. It is very important to teach others, of course. Adults have to teach children. You have to say the truth, never to lie. The children learn this. But it cannot be something that you simply do out of appearance. You look like you're saying the truth. And you avoid getting caught in a lie. So let's ask our blessed Lord, who gazes on us, like Jim Caviezel gazes on this guy, Jesus Arubi, the actor who played Barabbas. Let us ask him to help us to fall in love with the truth and knows that it is always possible to live the truth, defending the truth, living the truth, even though we are at a time in which there's a great suspicion about truth today. And we have to swim hard against the current of that suspicion, swim against the waves. Otherwise, we will be engulfed in the waves of relativism, as Pope Benedict used to call it, the dogma of relativism, the presumption of relativism. He said, relativism has become the religion of modern man. But of course, that religion is not a religion that can last. Relativism can't last. Catholic Church has lasted for thousands of years and will continue to last because it represents the truth. But relativism will go up and down. Maybe in a few years it'll go down. Who knows? I don't know. But it can't last. Relativism. The idea that there is a supermarket of truths doesn't make sense. Well, as we finish this time of prayer, let us invoke our Blessed Mother, who is really the mother of the truth. She is the mother of the Word incarnate. The Word was the truth. And we ask her to intercede for us so that she grant us the courage to always defend the truth and above all, to live by the truth in everything we do. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations you've communicated to me in this time of prayer. I ask your help to put them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.